Hello, my good friends. Hope you're doing well. I want to share a little story that I've been thinking about this week. The sun is starting to come out here in Portland, and every time it does during this time of year, I think back to when I was really little. And when I grew up, part of my childhood, I grew up in Arizona, and mostly in the Phoenix area. And one of the things that we would do is we'd always drive up to Flagstaff and into that area, the Route 66 area, where they have a lot of sort of, you could say some of them are sort of tourist trappy style diners. And I remember it's almost without fail every spring I'm reminded of the taste of a Shirley temple, which from my childhood recollection was basically like sugary cherry syrup or strawberry syrup put into Sprite, right? Or some kind of fizzy drink like that. And I used to love those things. I mean, they were such a treat for me when I was a kid. And I've been thinking a lot about everything that's going on right now in the world, but also just life in general, right? This is certainly not the first hard thing that you have probably done in your life. This may be one of the hardest things you've ever done, but certainly not the first hard thing. And it's the likelihood of this being the last hard thing you do is so unbelievably low that it's worth realizing that now is a great time to develop some skills, to use this as a learning opportunity so that when something crazy happens again, whether it's, again, on a personal level or a global level, you'll have some tools. So I was thinking about when we would go to these diners on Route 66, and then sometimes we'd try to do a diner in Phoenix or something, or somewhere else that we were living at the time. Or I just distinctly remember being a kid and going to one restaurant and saying, "Can I get the Shirley Temple?" And then going to another restaurant and asking for the same thing, but it tasting so different. And as an adult, I realize now that the reason they tasted so different is really the mixture, right? So some restaurants or whoever was preparing the drink may have put too much cherry in there or too much strawberry in there, and maybe too much soda, not enough soda, Sprite, whatever it was. And that mixture is ultimately what determined the taste. And I think what's really important right now to remember and understand is that our minds are just like a Shirley Temple in that there are inputs. So for a Shirley Temple, the input is the cherry syrup and the Sprite. Okay, depending on how much of each of those you put in, it gives you a different taste. Well, our minds are just like that. We have inputs. So we have positive inputs, so things that we seek out that raise us up. We have negative inputs. We have everything from what happens in our email is an input to what we see scrolling on our social media is an input, and et cetera, and et cetera. And each of these things are like the syrup or the soda. And every day we create our own mix for the day, depending on what inputs we put into our mind. Now, the interesting thing about being an adult versus being a kid is that when I was a kid, I was sort of at the mercy of how other people mixed the drink. And I mean that both figuratively and in real life, right? So the waiter is the one who would mix it. Well, now that I'm an adult, I can make my own Shirley Temples if I want to, and I can do it how I want, and it can taste the way I want it, and I love it. And that's obvious. It's obvious to us that we can buy chocolate milk when we want and mix it how we want. Just, like all the things we love to, we're powerless to do as a child, we now have power to do as an adult. But some of us, I think, forget that isn't just a thing that rolls over into mixing drinks. This is every aspect of how you were as a kid, you have control over now as an adult, including as a child when everyone else was in charge of the inputs and you were sort of along for the ride. I think a lot of adults haven't quite realized yet that they can control that mixture as well. That you don't have to be along for the ride, but you can actually design whatever it is that you want. And so if you don't like the taste of things right now, The way you can change that is by controlling your inputs, by adding a little more cherry soda, by putting less Sprite in. Maybe you don't even like Sprite. Maybe you want a totally different one. You could do a root beer Shirley Temple. I don't know. I don't even know if that's a thing. You could do a strawberry Coke or something, right? Whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe you don't like that at all. Maybe you want a totally different drink. But the problem is that a lot of people will sit there and they'll pour negativity into their brain all day long. And they will be really upset with the taste that they have in their mouth about their life or life in general. And they can't quite figure out that it's the same thing as sitting there pouring a bunch of cherry syrup into an inch of soda and wondering why your drink tastes mostly like cherry syrup when you prefer a more Sprite heavy Shirley Temple. Now, that I think is hopefully a helpful piece of advice, but there's a second one, and I think it's one that I personally am starting to get concerned about. And that is, what's also different about being an adult is that we can mess up other people's drinks. So I think even people who feel like they don't have influence have a lot of influence. The things that you post on social media, the way that you talk to others and treat others, your own ability to mix your own drink that's in your mind, your ability to balance yourself out. We, as human beings, are inputs for other human beings. Meaning, even if I just make a passing comment in an email, it's the same as walking by that person's table and dripping a bit of cherry soda into their glass. And the crazy thing is, they may or may not have asked for that. So at a time right now when everyone is very stressful and stressed out, at a time right now when people are struggling to keep their drink balanced, it is important, I think, to be mindful of your own influence on other people's inputs, realizing that you are an input. And to ask yourself, when you are putting stuff out in public, who is seeing this? How will this affect them? And I'm not talking about trying to be overly sensitive and never saying anything and never expressing yourself and never, saying I'm having a hard time. I'm simply saying, I think it's time that we start considering at least being mindful of public displays or public rantings or taking what we're feeling about upset in our own minds and then forcing those inputs on other people without really their asking for it. I'm sure this is going to stir up something from someone somewhere, but this stuff does actually affect people. And it's important that we practice social distancing physically, as well as every once in a while practicing social distancing mentally, emotionally, professionally, etc. So something worth considering, especially if you're in like big Facebook groups, or if you are in Slack channels, or you are in some online medium where oftentimes if you're just typing things, the meanings get lost as well. And I'm not like speaking of any specific instance, or it's not like something I've seen within the No Pants Project groups. I think our groups are really, really positive. But I mean, if you're in like some free Facebook group and it's a free Facebook group where there's just drama all the time, just be mindful of that. and ask yourself, do you like the taste? Because if you don't, you got to change the inputs. You got to change the drink that you're mixing because you're an adult now. You're the one who's mixing the drink. You're not a kid. It's not someone buying it for you. You're in charge of the drink that you're drinking. If you don't like the taste, it's up to you to change it. And I think that's just all I wanted to share with you guys today. Kept this one as short as I could. There's just some things I'm seeing just in general that I want to, if I can, help get people back to a good place. Because when people are in a good place, they do good things. When people are in a rough spot, they do rough things. And I'm speaking from experience. I was homeless. I was not my best person when I was up against the wall. And that's true whether it's financial, it's true whether it's mental, it's true whether it's emotional, it's true whether it's physical. You have an obligation, in my opinion, a communal, a social obligation to take care of yourself and to be mindful of your effect on other people. And I don't mean that in a hippy-dippy way either. I mean that in a very serious, let's get some stuff done. Let's be productive. Let's, fight this thing. Let's get over it as soon as possible. The longer it delays, the worse it's going to be for everybody. Let's start kicking some butt, taking some names, getting stuff done. And it's very difficult to do if we are all in bad spots mentally and we're contributing, we're walking around dipping cherry syrup into other people's stuff. Okay. So, when they haven't even asked for it, maybe they hate cherry, right? So, anyways, just some thoughts for today. Hopefully this has been helpful, giving you something to think about, to be a little bit more mindful about what you're allowing in and then what you are doing, to other people. So that's it for me, my dear friends. I hope you're doing awesome. Stay safe. Stay in a mode of getting yourself to a good spot, because we need you to be in a good spot. We need you to be in a good place so you can contribute to whatever's going on. Whether you're listening to this 5 years from now and everything's okay, or whether you're listening to it right now and smack in the middle of it. All right, that's it for me. For reals this time. I'll talk to you later. Bye.